Hi, I'm Erin Marcus, former corporate executive turned entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business. Welcome to the Ready Yet podcast. We're excited to bring you more than 100 episodes of interviews and insights designed to help entrepreneurs get the financial and emotional freedom they need in order to build a business and a life they're proud of. All right. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Ready Yet podcast. Here's the challenge. 1, you guys know I'm a talker. 2, my guest today is all about story. So I'll let you guys can guess how long have we been chatting before I hit, hey, we should probably hit record and share some of this, right? So Diane Wyzga, I'm so excited to have you here with me today and share what you do and why you do it. I think we are so on the same page of why it's so important. And so before we get into all of it, why don't you tell everyone a little more officially who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Erin. I'm just delighted to be here with you and coming to you from Whidbey Island, Washington. This is the voice of Stories from Women Who Walk with 60 seconds for whatever this is. Wednesdays on Whidbey. I am a storyteller, podcaster, and I work with women, helping them figure out their origin story, their archaeological dig, their branding, their marketing, and helping equip them with lifelong storytelling skills that they can apply to any challenge, any context. So if it has something to do with story, it's me.
I love it. And I love that you just caught me with something, how you said any challenge, any context. And I think I'm going to take this in a different direction than what we originally intended, but we'll come back. We won't come back. I think that's so important because when we think about what's going on in the world and how crazy some of it is, what connects us is empathy. And I think what helps create empathy is hearing other people's stories. It's such a problem-solving approach. And I think people underestimate how important that is.
We can stop right there.
Was that it?
Yeah.
Was that good?
Yeah, that's profound. Yes. It's absolutely true. And the role of story, if we go way, way, way back, was about teaching, and it was about connection. And people think that story is for children, but in truth, it was the adults who shared stories. And when the children were of an age, they were invited and privileged to sit at the story circle with the adults. And there's all sorts of stories about armies that meet each other on the battlefield, and all of the army people are killed, and there's only 2 people standing at the end of the war, and it's nighttime. And one of them says to the other, look, I'm going to put down my sword if you put down your sword, and we'll have something to eat and we'll have a sleep. And in the morning, we'll get up and fight the rest of this battle, and last one standing, more power to him. And of course, during the night, they trade stories about who they are and where they came from and yada, yada, yada. And the sun comes up in the morning. And because they've heard each other's stories, and this is the key, they've heard each other's stories, they just shake hands and walk away from the battlefield. And that sounds really simplistic. But when we realize that what we're fighting each other about, whether it's our perspective, it's our point of view, our political holding, whatever's going on in the world, we are not fighting with the person. We are fighting with the viewpoint that the person holds. And if we're authentic about it, if we're intentional about it, we can find a common denominator between our 2 positions and build on that and let the rest of it go. So what you've said about hearing another story, sharing another story, is absolutely at the heart of story. And I'll say 2 more things, and then I'll shut up.
No, you're good.
One is that story is very organic. It's in the corporate world looks at it as a thing to sell, and it's been co-opted and conscripted in terms of selling. But story is organic, and it will follow you home. It will sit at your table. It will sleep in your bed. And stories come to us when they need to be heard and told. So a storyteller is basically a conduit, and the story is moving through that person for whatever reason that it needs to be heard, that it needs to be told. I forgot
It's
the other things.
so true. That's okay. It'll come. It's so true because it is harder. There's good people and bad people, whatever. It's
Mhm.
harder to hate people once you know their story because you start seeing
Yeah.
them as human. When you don't have any story to attach to it, it's easier for you, or you get to assign your story to someone else as opposed
Mhm.
to hearing their story.
Mhm.
One of the things
Yep.
I learned, this was so profound for me. I was younger at the time and going through a divorce, and it was in one of my executive leadership classes when I got my MBA, that all conflicts are rules based. That
Mhm.
we might want the same thing, but we have different rules about what's the right way to do to get to the thing.
Exactly.
And to me, story breaks that apart.
It does. Story allows us to find that common theme. So we can take something as controversial as guns.
Mhm.
It's controversial, whichever way you look at it. But if we can find the common denominator, which is that we all want to be safe. At the end of the day, each of us wants to be safe and secure and have the same thing for our loved ones. And so if we can build a common denominator bridge around the notion of safety, then we can take two relatively opposing points of view and find a way in which we can integrate them. And the thing about the notion of safety is that story is built on universal truths. So, truths with a capital T. And no matter where in the world you go, people understand. So, you said in the leadership course after the divorce, right?
Mhm.
So, people hearing your story might not have been married, might not have been divorced, but everybody understands loss. They understand betrayal. They understand abandonment. They understand starting over again. And so, with our stories, when we're building those with the themes of universal truths, then we have a much better chance of reaching the other person because then they've heard that overarching idea, even though it comes to them in our particular situation or experiences.
Right. And if you want to know how powerful a story is, I would argue that most of the chaos and like people use story to further their agenda. You can create a story, a non-factual, or even if you don't want to call it non-factual, an opinion version of a story, a skewed version of a story, right? I remember the statistics, you can make them say anything. It's whatever, the number is neutral, it's the story you put around it to either prove or disprove. And so many times we, especially now with AI and with, I was watching a gentleman, semi-famous, talk about the stories that are posted about him. And even though they're not negative, they're all completely false. They're completely contrived. They're completely made up.
Because they are fact neutral, but the spin put on the fact, is that?
No, in this case, they were making up, they were saying that he was divorced and had a child, and there was no woman by the name of the person he was supposedly divorced from.
Oh,
It was
okay.
100% false.
Okay. So to pull something out of the air, we'll call it fake news. And
Fake
that
news.
that is a term that is ramped up in our culture over time.
Yeah.
You make a very good point about the skew of a story, and I'll take it all the way back to ourselves. I also want to go back to the teachers,
Mhm.
because you mentioned something about the impersonality of people, labeling
Yes.
them with one thing or another. But when we can think about too the stories that we tell ourselves,
Oh
the
God.
stories that we tell
Those are
ourselves,
probably
right?
the
See,
most skewed, right? I think
and
the
the most
story, the
scary.
most false, the most lies is the
Yeah.
stories we tell ourselves.
Where
Oh
did
my
that
God,
come
so
from?
true. Can you tell I've
Well,
been
see.
doing some work? Can you tell this is fresh in my mind? Oh my God. So like,
Oh,
where did I
yeah.
even come up with this? So
Well,
true.
see, it's complicated in my family because I'm the oldest of seven. So
Oh
I know
God.
all the stories and whether you like them or not. I know what happened. I know where it happened. I know to whom it happened. And the
Why?
way I tell it is the way it happened.
Sure,
Yes. So I've
sure.
got work to do too. But so the stories that we tell ourselves, we start with that. And as we grow into our wisdomhood, and we become aware of things that no longer work for us,
Yeah.
ways of being that no longer work for us, stuff that no longer fits or is in service to us, like an old pair of shoes. And we begin to do our work and realize that's stupid. It's time to let go
Let
of
go
this.
of
There's
the
what's the point
story.
of holding on? It's time to close
Yeah.
the door on that. And that then talks about our own integrity and authenticity with ourselves. So we begin there. We begin at that point of cleaning up our own act. And when I work with women around their origin story, one of the things we do is an archaeological dig, because there's a whole civilization over there. And you want to find out, what the civilization was and how did it inform, how does it inform
And not only
today?
that, you're more than likely, I'm 54 years old, and yet the stories I tell myself, they're all out of the eyes of a 5-year-old and 8-year-old. And so why all these
Yes.
decades later? So of course they're going to be a hot mess compared to reality because a little kid made them up. But I've been holding on to them for so long.
Because there's nothing to replace them. So until we find something, and that's the scary part. Once you start to let go of the big mud pie of stuff that we were told or we learned to tell ourselves, until we let go of that and then fill that in with something good and better, mo better than that was,
Yeah.
it's scary because there's nothing there.
There's
So
nothing
what are we
there.
going to
And
hold
how do
on
I
to?
get to this age and not know who I am when
That's
I
right.
really felt, especially me, that I've always been on very solid ground.
That's right. I've got it all together.
I've got it all together. I know exactly who I am. And like, wait a minute, why? This is all ridiculous. So how did you get into this? Because I'm so curious.
How did
Why
I
are
get
you
into
doing
this
this?
hot mess?
Why are you doing this?
How did I get into other people's hot messes? So I'm here at Quarter Moon Story Arts because 30 years of story in nursing, in the military, in business, in law. And one of the best things I ever did was as a litigation consultant, where I got to tell lawyers how to tell the story of their plaintiff clients so that they can be human.
Human, right? Oh my gosh. So
Human. What a novel idea. And what I realized, so this is what's so important, I think, about life, and people probably will agree, that we live our lives, as you said, looking forward. We keep moving forward. We're on solid ground. We know where we're headed. And then only when we look backwards do we go, oh, wait a minute. Now I know why this led to this. So
Mhm.
here I am at this ripe old age of whatever. And I know by the time I show up, my billing records are going to be a little bit different than my chronological age. But hey, I'm a storyteller. What can I say? What I realized is that coming out of my incest background and also coming out of a family where I am the oldest of 7, there was limited opportunity to be seen, heard, understood, and listened to. Precious little. Part of it was the culture,
Time
part of it was the
management.
family.
Part of it was just there was a few too
Just
many.
like get that herd back in. And so over time, what I realized is that all along I've been helping people, and then eventually women, by and large, it's always been women, say their mind, find the power of their voice, say what they mean, what they say. And in order to do that, they have to know who they are.
Yeah.
Where do they come from? What are they doing? Why are they doing it? For whom are they doing it? And are they true to themselves, or are they carrying out someone else's mission or idea? And so it over time, over 30 years of time of working with story and people in various professions, I realized I'm about 3 things. 1, pushing back on injustice.
Mhm.
2, communication, that whole say what you mean, what you say, be seen, heard, understood, and listened to. And 3, it's actually become more of a movement of gathering women together and saying, we have the world's most powerful voice. And it's time to begin rewriting some of the narrative
Mm.
that doesn't recognize that voice, so that as we age out of this world, and there are the young women, the young girls coming up behind us, how can we rewrite the narrative such that they feel more capable of speaking in a clear, concise, cogent, confident voice with conviction, of making their ideas understood and heard, of being listened to. So that's how it got me here. And there's been a lot of fall down 7, get up 8
Oh,
behind it, because I had to overcome my own story. What I don't have a story to tell. If I did have a story, no one would listen to it. Like maybe,
the
and then
whole,
coming.
everybody else has, there's some people who have a worse story, so who am I to tell my story?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that is how I got here. And that's the work that I do. And that's why I do it. So now it's important. It's important to me that this be done, because I can't fix the world, but I can help. See, I say that I can't teach you how to tell a story, but I can teach you how to teach yourself. The
And you
minute
went to
you
say, I
teach
can't
yourself,
change the world. And I just did a video the other day that had
what?
me stop waiting for the world to change, just go change your world.
Oh, I saw that one. Yes, it was good.
And I think this concept of story, there is something so, it's very interesting, like the iterations I've gone through, where if you've seen this, where there's at one point where you finally get brave enough to tell your story. There's something so powerful about being witnessed,
Yeah.
about being witnessed. And then even moving away from even that external requirement and being internally witnessed. Right?
We can
Like,
stop here.
we can stop here again. Can you, again, perfect timing, been doing a minute of work here. Can you accept your own story? Is a different level of, are you willing to tell your story and willing to be seen? Is oddly often even easier to help somebody do than to accept without judgment their own story.
I find that oftentimes I'm in a therapeutic role and I'm not a therapist. One stop, snap out of it, and then you're gone. But story is therapeutic and healing for some of the reasons that you gave. A story takes place with components. There's got to be a teller, there's got to be a listener, there's got to be a story. And where the three of them intersect, you've got the act of storytelling going on. And as you're saying, to have someone witness you telling your story, for example, a therapist witnessing you finally coming face to face with somebody, that's it. But when you stand up and say, this is my story, this is who I am, I'm standing in my own truth, I've made mistakes, I've screwed up, and I have a difficult story to tell, but now I'm in control of it.
Yes.
And that's huge. That's the self-realization part, because we're not going to be afraid of what changes when we face our story, nor are we going to be mastered by that change until we can realize, okay, I've got this under control. Now I'm in charge.
I'm no
That's the
longer
self-mastery.
trapped being reactive. That's one of my
Exactly.
big things, is get out of,
Yeah.
am I being reactive?
Yeah.
Am I in charge of my situation?
Yep.
And I think this is so important right now, just to hook this back to business, because so many of my audiences is business owners. What we're talking about and the willingness to do it and the ability to do it, humans buy from humans. People buy from people they know and trust. And the world has gotten noisy in terms of quantity, in terms of volume, both quantity and just, I don't know, decibels. And this is how you break through that.
Yeah. And it is starting with your own authenticity. It is starting with that place of realizing that you have work to do and you've got a story to tell. And then you become, as you say, witness to your own story. And then that can turn. So that is what gives life and consciousness and intentionality to your product, to your service, to your marketing, to your branding, because it's
Otherwise, you're
you.
just a commodity.
You're just a voice in the
Like,
wind.
there's no information out there that you can't get for free or for a 1999 membership to Masterclass, right? Like, they're amazing. They'll tell you everything. So how to do something is Google, it's YouTube, but people buy from people they know,
People.
like, and trust, right? It's not how do I do the
Yep.
thing, but how do I learn to do the thing from the person I connect with?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why,
Yes.
to me, I know I mentioned this to you, I've moved 90% of what I'm doing really to YouTube and podcasting to make sure everything is connect as a human first and cannot be, I don't worry about that. We use AI for efficiencies,
Sure,
not
brainstorming. It's fun to have a
right.
robot in the house.
Ideation, tell me 12 things about this. Oh, I like that one. Let me expand.
Exactly.
Or efficiencies like Grammarly, whatever it is, but not the connection part. And I think people are trying to press an easy button with, oh, just let AI do all of your.
No, it can't. Even though I talk to it and say please and thank you and what do you think?
I do too. I'm very polite to ChatGPT.
They say it matters.
Very polite.
They say it definitely matters. But think about it. It's like they say that dogs can smell fear. Okay, let's just assume that's the case. Dogs can smell fear and people can smell the inauthenticity of
I was going to just call
going
it,
on.
people can smell the BS. Like, it's
That's right. They can. Yeah, they can. And here is why. Here is why story work. It's because we are inviting listeners to use their imagination. So when you were telling this story earlier about your parrot cage, you didn't go into a lot of detail, but I could see the flurry of feathers in the room and this woman who was madly trying to clean things up until she couldn't anymore and just said, fine.
Fine. Vacuum.
Get the vacuum cleaner. And if the parrot goes up at the same time, we'll do
different
that.
approach.
But see, with story now, we are inviting the listener not only to activate their imagination, thank you, wordsmith, because that's where it all is taking place, but we are inviting them to reflect on feelings and sensations and memories and experiences.
Yeah.
So you were talking earlier about your loved ones who have a different schooling experience than you and I enjoy.
I was saying, growing up in Chicago public schools in the 70s and 80s, we didn't think our teachers were human. There was such a separation. And yet my nieces, because of the pandemic lockdown, have literally been in their teachers' homes via Zoom. And we thought our teachers just disappeared at the end of the day.
Yeah, they're airplanes. Somebody hung them in the cloakroom and then woke them up the next morning so that they could teach us algebra. But in the course of listening to you tell that story, share that little bit, I'm listening to you. And at the same time, my imagination is taking me back into my schooling experiences, into third grade, Mrs. Fletcher, what I liked about her and how it felt. And so I'm hearing your story, obviously, because I could just give a little bit of it. But at the same time, my own history is going on in my mind. And if we tell a heartfelt story artfully, we are going to connect with the listener on those levels. And that is something AI will never be able to do.
I agree.
So that's the key. That is the key right there. You're looking for stories that you can tell. And if you've got difficult stories, and I'm guessing we all do, then we do our work ahead of time so that we can manage that story before we put it out there. Yeah, that's how it works. Ta-da.
Love it. We could keep going, but if people want to continue this conversation with you and learn more about your story, learn how to pull theirs out, what is the best way for them? And we'll put it in the show notes, but what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
I have such a deal. I have a complimentary 45-minute discovery chat. And I know it sounds longer than your normal 20-minute, let's check in and see who you are, but it's really designed to give you an opportunity at coaching without any obligation, without any sales. And you can do that firsthand and then decide, okay, do I want to go forward or not? So on my website, quartermoonsstoryarts.net, there was actually a link to the 45-minute discovery chat. And you can just click on that. It'll take you to the Calendly page, and we set up some time, and there you go. And I find it enormously helpful because we can begin establishing a bit of a relationship right there.
Yeah.
I get to bring something you want to work on, and we have an opportunity to do a little bit of coaching. So you get to see, is this a good fit? Do I want to keep going on with it? So I think it works really well.
I love it. I always tell people, don't be afraid to give things away, because the right people, then it's easy. The rest of the conversations are so easy. So I absolutely love
That's
it.
right.
We will make sure we have that link in the show notes. Thank you for spending time with me today. I absolutely love chatting with you.
This has been fun.
You're
Yeah, if you
awesome.
ever get out to Whidbey, Ireland, just I'll
Show
keep
up
a
at your
podcast burning in the window.
doorstep.
Yeah, we'll have pie.
Show up at your doorstep. Absolutely. Thank you
Okay, Dor,
so
my
much.
pleasure. Thanks, Erin.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ready Yet podcast. I truly enjoy bringing these stories of success and inspiration to you. Please join us in our mission to empower entrepreneurs to be in charge of their businesses and in charge of their lives by sharing this with anyone you know who would benefit from our tactical and motivating advice, leaving us a review, and letting us know if there are any particular topics you would really appreciate hearing about. See you next time.